There's dust on the antenna. Yeah, fuck it. Anyway, thank you for purchasing the digital deluxe edition of the Jimquisition with its exclusive Lob Sterling skin. And that's it. That's the joke. The joke of the show. I'm a consumer whore, and how? I'd say I'm one in spite of my career-long stance against customer exploitation and the selling of pointless crap, but it's because of that, not in spite. I understand all too well how good companies are at swindling their marks because I'm a complete bloody mark. I'll collect all sorts of crap. I got this Betty Boop the other day and I don't even know why. When it comes to games, I've been suckered in by deluxe editions quite a few times. Many times. Too fucking many. But after getting burned by a few recent so-called deluxe editions, I think I finally walked the road from temptation to buyer's remorse enough to lay out the definitively compelling reasons why deluxe editions are a total scam job that can fuck right off, and should fuck right off all the way to fuckly square. Let these arguments ring in your head if, like me, you're a consumer whore and how, and you find your finger trembling above the buy now button.
The beautiful shiny button! The jolly candy-like button!
Where once upon a time, even so-called digital deluxe editions at least offered some compelling content, the recent run of games that charge $10 extra for a few consumables and one or two explicitly problematic cosmetics, at a time when the game industry overall has jacked up prices by $10 across the board, publishers really are charging more than ever for less than ever, with their $80 deluxe editions that have less than half the content a deluxe edition would have had 10 years ago. It's disgusting. I don't know why I said all that so tunefully, that makes no sense. Why did I try and turn that into a song, but without enough confidence to actually hold a tune?
Why, in my arrogance, do I think I can edit a single episode of this program that doesn't take a giant meta trip up its own tuchus?
If you're like me, simply knowing it's a scam isn't quite enough to make you remember you will regret getting that alleged upgrade. Because you're not just a consumer whore, you're the type of person video game companies have targeted for years, the kind of person who, say, loves cosmetics enough to view them as a part of the video game experience rather than some weirdly extraneous optional part like publishers have tried to convince everyone they are. They're not. As I've argued for years, cosmetics in games aren't just cosmetic, no matter how many people say that, to justify the aggressive monetization of cosmetics. I won't go over all the arguments again, but I'll reiterate that you can't spend ages farming gear to get the perfect look in a Souls game and then tell me cosmetics don't matter. The very existence of fashion Souls as a concept puts paid to the idea that it's just cosmetic. If it makes the game more engrossing, more engaging, more fun, that ain't makeup, that's under the skin. Game companies know this, which is why they monetize costumes and skins as much as they do, while plausibly denying their impact on one's enjoyment of a game. Deluxe editions are just one area where vanity items are dangled under the noses of players, and whether the game in question is single player or completely online, buying a more expensive game for the outfits is always going to reveal itself to be a huge con. Two games recently came out that perfectly demonstrate the issue with deluxe edition costumes: the multiplayer-focused Helldivers 2 and the solo-only Stellar Blade. If you've regretted buying any deluxe edition for the exclusive costumes, you'll almost certainly find that my descriptions of these two games will be a one-to-one relatable experience, because the disappointment goes down the exact same way every time. If you buy Helldivers 2, you get an exclusive costume and a little title onto your name. Woohoo! How exclusive! Aren't you the little fancy pants? Well, about that. Do you know who else has that exclusive content and is compelled to wear it at all times because it cost money? Every other fucker alongside you who bought it. Meanwhile, the other players who are just unlocking and wearing outfit pieces as they go and pick their cosmetics based on preference rather than a sense of financial self-obligation, all start to dress pretty differently, or at least don't look like the half a dozen identical deluxe costume wearers you've seen in the past 2 matches alone. All the big fans who buy the fancy edition on launch day flood the servers all wearing the same shit. Almost immediately, the so-called exclusive outfit stands out as more uniform and default than the the stuff everyone else is wearing, which often includes stuff you like the look of better than the shit you paid extra for, because of course you didn't know all of the outfits and gears and costumes and skins that would be in the base product. In exchange for your $10, you didn't get a special costume, you got a millstone around your neck as the sunk costs compel you to wear it, something you're low-key ashamed of anyway, because you know deep down the other players aren't seeing this as a flex, they just think you're a dick. You and all the other dicks are running around in literal dick uniforms, letting everyone know you're a dick, looking identical to each other. And you tell me, what about that experience has been upgraded? Stellar Blade gives you some head start resources and an exclusive costume for the protagonist Eve. Ooh, symbolic. If that sounds okay to you, one thing you ought to understand before buying it is that finding and crafting new costumes for Eve is a huge part of the experience, as the player is drowned in ever more exotic and absurd outfits to really show off how very breasts this game is. As a fan of customization in games, one of my absolute favourite parts of this game is that wealth of ridiculous costumery. If you restrict yourself to just one outfit, you're really missing out, and I'm not saying that for the obvious reasons, arses, tits and stuff, big fat dumpers, you know, kind of thing. If you've ever bought a Deluxe Edition and been let down by the fact that the exclusive cosmetics are among the most drab and unexciting available in the game, then you absolutely don't need Stellar Blade swindling bullshit. Not only is the Stargazer suit among the game's least colourful, cool, or breasts, it's also just a fucking recolor of a suit already in the base game that has a nicer fucking colour scheme. Yes, it's one of those situations, and if you're lucky enough to have never been manipulated by the industry, yes, this is a scam video games pull all the time with their so-called exclusives. Shitty reskins of base game content that, like with the online games, just become an albatross that's keeping you away from better things. In all my years in this biz, I've never seen the argument against special edition cosmetics laid out this way, and I've certainly never laid it out myself before recently. But like with Rowdy Roddy Piper putting on his special glasses in They Live, this new perspective somehow wipes the veil off and really helped contextualize for me exactly why you shouldn't buy special editions expecting to get anything other than visual signifiers of your own ill-advised impulsivity. Sometimes it's just about how you word things. Yeah, fuckers. Of course, cosmetics aren't the only swindle going on. Firstly, let's get this one out of the way. Fuck digital art books and digital soundtracks. Despite being the foundation of special edition content from the very start, at least when collector's editions were real collector's editions, soundtracks and art books were nice physical items, but game companies still do them in the digital age, charging money for what at this point is just a collection of fucking JPEGs and fucking MP3s. Final Fantasy Crisis Core Reunion recently took this to ridiculous extremes, as the only extra contents were a digital art book and soundtrack. Fucking pathetic. Now, items that have a direct impact on game mechanics have historically been deluxe offerings as well, and like with outfits, they can be worthless letdowns in a couple of ways. The most common letdown is that whatever you get, be it an exclusive weapon or piece of armor or whatever, you'll find it's only really good for the early game at best, because if it were strong enough to take you further, your experience would be too broken and steamrolled to be enjoyable. You'll see this in RPGs and other loot-based games a lot, and while some balance it by letting you swap gear appearances so your stuff still looks like the deluxe content, that just recreates the cosmetic problems we've already discussed. At least one game's deluxe edition didn't bother with balancing at all and literally sold a gun that made the game worse. Deathloop's more expensive version came with the Eat the Rich Tribunal, a silenced, lethally powerful pistol that was so overwhelmingly good at instantly dropping whatever it pointed at, it completely undermined the entire combat system, turning it into a total fucking joke. I made a point of playing through Deathloop with that gun, and do you know what the result was? It made Deathloop one of the shallowest, dullest, shittest FPSs ever. Bethesda charged extra to break the game. Weird. They usually break their games free of charge. Same goes for the flogging of resources and consumables, which must also either be useless enough to not break the game at first, or just break the game. At best, you can get some useful currency or skill points for a head start, but naturally, the more you play that game, the more of a blip on the radar that head start becomes. It's always been a con, a scam, a bamboozle, a setup, a scheme, a grift, a bunch of baby shit. But as with a lot of industry awfulness, it's become more obvious lately thanks to the sheer extremity with which game publishers have taken the piss. See, I don't think I'd have noticed all this chicanery quite so starkly recently if Deluxe Edition content wasn't such a pittance these days. Multiple costumes became one costume if you're lucky, extra weapons became one weapon, maybe two. Content more meaningful than any of that disappeared entirely. When you offer one special outfit that every Deluxe Edition buyer feels compelled to wear, it becomes noticeable very fucking quick. When you have one special edition suit in a game full of amazing outfits, you notice how boring your one is very fucking quick, and you'll notice it even fucking quicker as soon as you spot it's just a fucking recolor. You might not believe it these days, but there was once a time, a very long time ago, when a deluxe edition of a video game actually meant a shit, or was at the very least a lot less obligatory, a lot more varied, and nowhere near the level of insultingly rote scammery masquerading as upgraded purchases we see today. That was so long ago, physical media was still the predominant way to access games, with digital distribution, I hate saying digital distribution, still in its infancy. What this meant was that a limited or collector's edition of a game was almost exclusively the domain of physical media, which in turn meant such editions featured physical goods. At the most basic level, you'd get a, say, steelbook case with that art book and soundtrack CD as the fundamental offerings. Then you'd get any old assortment of trinkets, maps, and statues that would vary from halfway decent to fucking hilariously awful. Of course, in-game content was still part of the bargain, but it often wasn't the biggest draw. When digital distribution became mainstream, industry executives were faced with a dilemma as they thrust their quaking penises into blow-up dolls stuffed full of banknotes. How could they charge more money for extraneous bullshit when you can't make a plastic toy of an abused pregnant ghost girl? Well, I say it was a dilemma. They merely did what they'd done when digital distribution made pre-orders obsolete. They simply carried the fuck on and spent years whittling down customer expectations of what constitutes worthwhile bonus content. And after that, we started getting fucking tiers of game upgrades, because of fucking course we did. Through the 2020s, it became common to see standard, silver, and gold editions of new releases. If you were Ubisoft, you'd have at least 6 versions of one game, including an Ultimate Edition that was usually the second to last most expensive one, so it was literally not ultimate. But we won't rake that muck up again. Actually, out of all the muck Ubisoft's got to rake, they'd probably prefer I do that one, and not all the sex abuse. Physical collector's editions still exist, but they're often treated as true luxury items now, and can come with some truly prohibitive prices. You have outlets like Limited Run, still flying the flag of physical deluxe editions, but then they go and make physical deluxe editions of the Jurassic fucking Park collection, so who knows what the fuck's going on. Meanwhile, digital deluxe versions of games no longer feel deluxe at all, if indeed they ever did, and as the game industry did what it does so well and systematically stripped away the value prospect of the shit it was selling, the inherent worthlessness of the whole shoddy con has now been made readily apparent. Fucking wankers. I don't have anything more constructive to say than that. Not anymore. Ha ha ha, what a great show. And that's it. That's the outro of the show. Thank God for me.